My name is Isabella Ward. I'm 34 years old. When I started my career in cybersecurity 12 years ago, I didn't have an office, employees, or even proper equipment, just a secondhand laptop, a shaky Wi-Fi connection, and an old desk wedged against my apartment window. I used to pull all-nighters fixing network breaches for small businesses that couldn't afford the big consulting firms. Most nights, the only light in my apartment came from my computer screen and the city glow seeping through thin curtains. I lived on caffeine adrenaline and the quiet satisfaction of solving problems nobody else could. That's where I met Ethan at a coffee shop I practically lived in. He was charming in a restless way, always talking about startups, investors, and the next big thing. He just quit his sales job to chase entrepreneurship. I thought that kind of courage was magnetic. When he smiled at me that first day, I didn't notice the hint of calculation behind it. Back then, I just saw possibility. We married 6 months later in a small ceremony behind his parents' house. I remember looking at him during our vows and believing we'd grow together, that my work ethic and his ambition would balance each other out. And for a while it felt like that. I kept freelancing, building a reputation. Ethan was always working on something, always one pitch away from success. First, an NFT platform that crashed before launch. Then a dating app nobody downloaded. Then an organic food delivery startup that folded in under a year. Each failure came with an apology and a promise. Next one's the big one, Izzy, he used to say, using the nickname I eventually started to hate. I told him it was fine, that I believed in him. That's what love meant to me. Patience, encouragement, loyalty. Even when he burned through $120,000 of our shared savings, I told him we'd rebuild. I meant it. Meanwhile, my small freelancing jobs grew into Ward Cyber Solutions, a real company with a handful of employees, actual office space, and contracts that paid in six figures. My days became a blur of client calls and project meetings. Ethan, meanwhile, became something of a regular at networking events, fancy dinners, golf sessions, brainstorming trips with friends who had more ideas than discipline. He always said he was handling business development, but I rarely saw results. Still, I told myself that every marriage had uneven seasons. Mine was just a little more lopsided. We never had kids. Ethan said he wanted to wait until his business took off. I stopped bringing it up after a while. By then, our marriage had become a series of polite check-ins. I'd come home late. He'd be scrolling through his phone, half listening to my updates about clients. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m., and find him pacing in the living room, talking quietly into his Bluetooth earpiece about seed funding or angel investors. I wanted to believe he was building something, but sometimes when I looked at him from across the room, I saw not a builder, but a man measuring how much longer he could live off what I built. 2 years ago, I landed the Oracle contract, the biggest deal of my career. It was worth millions over 3 years. I worked for months on that proposal, staying up late, triple-checking every clause. The day it was approved, I called Ethan, shaking with excitement. He congratulated me, then immediately asked if we could celebrate in Miami, because networking opportunities were better there. He flew out the next morning to fish with friends. I celebrated alone. When he came home, he smiled and said he was proud of me, but something had shifted. The way he looked at me wasn't admiration anymore, it was calculation, like he was adding up how much I was worth. After that, he started making little comments. You're always working. You don't make time for us anymore. You care more about your company than your marriage. At first, I took them to heart. I tried to cut back, take weekends off. But you can't run a growing business on half effort. I couldn't explain that success came with responsibility, that hundreds of paychecks depended on my focus. He didn't want to understand. He wanted to compete. 6 months ago, I secured the Microsoft contract, 40% of our company's annual revenue. I called Ethan from Denver, ecstatic, ready to tell him the good news. He congratulated me over the phone, but when he got home, he didn't even mention it. Instead, he accused me of acting like I'd saved the company single-handedly. I laughed at first, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. That was the first night I slept in the guest room. From then on, the tension thickened like humidity before a storm. He'd host his weekly Thursday gatherings with his 3 college friends, Jacob, Ryan, and Brandon. I always made myself scarce during those nights, giving them space to talk, drink, and complain about life. Ethan said it helped him decompress. I'd cook for them anyway, ribs, wings, grilled vegetables. Old habits die hard. I still wanted to believe I was building a home worth fighting for. But lately, even his friends' laughter sounded different, sharper, meaner. Sometimes when I walked by, the conversation would abruptly stop. Once I heard my name followed by a low chuckle I didn't recognize from Ethan. It was subtle at first, the shift from being loved to being tolerated. The smiles lasted half a second too long, the compliments edged with envy. One night, as I poured wine into glasses, Jacob said, "You're lucky, Ethan. Most guys would kill for a wife with her kind of brain." Ethan's answer still echoes in my mind. Brains don't mean much if you forget how to be a wife. They all laughed. I did too, because what else was I supposed to do? But something cold settled in my stomach that never really left. The Thursday night that changed everything started like any other. I'd marinated the ribs the night before and spent an hour making sure the table looked perfect. Candles, napkins, the good plates. Ethan liked things to look good when his friends came over. I told myself it mattered, that effort still meant something. When the doorbell rang, I wiped my hands on a towel and smiled like always. The men poured in loud and confident, smelling of beer and cologne. I told them I'd bring the ribs out soon. As I carried the tray toward the patio, I heard their laughter drifting in. I slowed down, balancing the tray against my hip. Ethan's voice carried over the sound of the grill. "She's not on my level anymore," he said. "Our marriage won't last another year." The tray slipped slightly in my hands, ribs shifting against the foil. My chest went tight. I froze in the doorway, the night air brushing my face. Ryan's voice followed, half laughing. "About time, man." Then Ethan's tone turned colder. "I've been documenting everything. My lawyer says I've got a solid case to take half the company." My pulse roared in my ears. Documenting everything. Jacob said something I couldn't fully hear. Brandon added, "You built that company from nothing, bro." I wanted to scream that it was me. I built it every late night, every sleepless contract negotiation. But I just stood there holding that tray like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My ribs were getting cold. My life apparently was already over. I don't remember deciding to move. One second I was frozen in the doorway. The next I was walking onto the patio. The four of them turned, startled like kids caught cheating on a test. Ethan's face went pale. I set the tray down on the table harder than I meant to. The sound made all of them flinch. "There's no need to wait a year," I said quietly. "We can end this marriage today." Then I turned around and walked back into the house. Behind me, nobody said a word. I don't remember much. Between walking back into the house and zipping up my suitcase, everything in between felt like a blur, colorless, soundless, as if my brain had gone on autopilot just to protect me from the weight of what I'd heard. My hands were steady, though. Too steady. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I was just done. Ethan appeared in the doorway of our bedroom, his face pale and panicked. "Isabella, wait," he said, stepping forward like a man trying to stop a moving train with his bare hands. "You don't understand what you heard." I didn't even look at him. I folded another blouse and placed it carefully on top of my jeans. "You were very clear," I said flatly. He exhaled sharply, the kind of laugh people do when they're desperate to sound calm. "Those guys were just talking trash. You know how it is. Men vent. You're taking it out of context." Context. I zipped the suitcase. "Like the part where you said you've been documenting everything for your lawyer." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His silence was the confirmation I didn't need, but already had. I unplugged my laptop, grabbed my phone charger, and slung my bag over my shoulder. When I finally looked up, Ethan's expression had shifted from guilt to calculation. The salesman was back, except now the product he was pitching was a lie. "You're overreacting," he said softly. "You've been under a lot of stress lately. I know work has been hard." "Don't," I said, my voice slicing through his sentence. "Don't turn this into a mental health talk. You've been planning this for months, haven't you?" He blinked, his jaw tightening. "You're being paranoid." I stared at him for a long second, the man I'd once believed was my partner, now standing there, scrambling for control. "Paranoid," I repeated. "That's one of your favorite words lately." I walked past him. His arm shot out instinctively, but he didn't touch me. The sound of my suitcase wheels rolling across the floor was louder than either of us breathing. Downstairs, the laughter on the patio had faded. I wondered if his friends had heard our voices, or if they were pretending not to. Pretending seemed to be their specialty. When I stepped outside to the driveway, Ethan followed, still pleading. "Where are you even going?" "Somewhere quiet," I said, opening the car door. "I'll call you tomorrow. We'll talk it out." "No, you won't," I said. "You'll call your lawyer." He flinched like I'd slapped him, but I didn't stay to watch his face crumble. I got in, started the engine, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I saw his friends standing by the grill, awkward and silent, beer bottles, dangling from their hands like props in a play that had suddenly gone off script. The Hilton downtown smelled like lemon disinfectant and industrial air conditioning, the kind of sterile peace that comes after an explosion. I handed over my credit card and ID with a composure that didn't feel like mine. Checking in for one night, the receptionist asked. "Make it 2, I said. I rode the elevator up to the 8th floor, the mirrored walls reflecting a woman who looked nothing like me, hair disheveled, eyes empty. The hallway carpet swallowed the sound of my steps. I entered my room, flicked on the light, and set my suitcase down by the bed. I sat for a long time without moving. My phone buzzed once, twice, then relentlessly. Ethan. The first messages were furious. Ethan. You just walked out. Are you serious? Then they softened. Ethan. We can fix this. I didn't mean what I said. Then they turned manipulative. Ethan. You're ruining everything we built. Do you even know how this will look? Then came the threats. Ethan. If you try to take the company from me, I'll make sure you regret it. I turned the phone face down and stared at the ceiling. The hum of the air vent was the only sound in the room. Finally, I did what I should have done months ago. I called Jennifer Hartman, my attorney. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm and sharp as glass. Isabella, are you okay? I told her everything, the conversation. I overheard Ethan's exact words, even the laughter that still echoed in my ears. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she was silent for a moment, then said something that made my stomach twist. Jacob, one of Ethan's friends, right? Yes. He contacted me earlier tonight. He says he has information about Ethan's financial activities. He sounded shaken. I frowned. Information. He claims Ethan's been planning to dissolve your company behind your back, that he's been gathering material to support his claim as co-founder. My throat went dry. He's lying. Ethan never... I believe you, she said firmly. But if Jacob is turning against him, you need to listen. He wants to meet tonight. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jacob, the same man who just laughed at my humiliation, now wanted to help. I didn't know whether to trust him or slam the door in his face. But if he had evidence, I couldn't afford pride. Tell him to come, I said quietly. Jennifer hesitated. Are you sure you'll be safe? I looked around at the spotless hotel room, white walls, white sheets, white silence. I'm safe, I said. I'm just not sure I've ever been more awake. Room service arrived around 10:30, a burger and fries, comfort food for the emotionally bankrupt. I ate half, not because I was hungry, but because it kept my hands busy. The city outside was alive with lights and motion, yet I felt like I was sealed behind glass. I tried to imagine Ethan pacing the house, rehearsing apologies that wouldn't land. Or maybe he was already with his friends, strategizing the next move. At 11:45, there was a knock at the door. 3 short taps, then silence. I checked the peephole. Jacob. He looked different, nervous, older somehow. In his arms were 3 cardboard boxes stacked unevenly. I opened the door, saying nothing. He stepped inside, setting the boxes on the desk. For a moment, the only sound was the soft thud of cardboard hitting wood. He didn't meet my eyes. I thought Ethan was just venting at first, he said quietly. We all complain about our spouses sometimes, right? But he took it too far. I crossed my arms. Too far, like planning to steal my company. Jacob nodded once. He started months ago, right after you landed the Oracle contract. My pulse quickened. Show me. He opened the first box. Inside were file folders organized, color-coded, labeled in Ethan's handwriting. Each one contained printed emails from me, updates to clients, reminders to employees, project summaries. Normal correspondence. Except in the margins, Ethan had scribbled notes twisting every word. Working late again. Proof of neglecting husband. Difficult client. Sign of temper issues. There were photographs, 2 grainy shots taken through the office window. Me at my desk at 9 p.m., coffee cup in hand, focused on my work. Ethan had turned my dedication into ammunition. I swallowed hard. He's been following me. Jacob nodded, and building a narrative. A bad one. He opened the second box. Bank statements, investment records, transfer receipts. He set up a shell company 3 months ago, said it was a new venture. The plan was to poach your biggest clients after the divorce. I pressed my hands against the table to steady myself. My heart was racing, but my voice came out calm. Why are you showing me this, Jacob? He finally looked up. His eyes were red. Because it's wrong. Ethan's not divorcing you. He's trying to erase you. And I can't be part of it anymore. The room felt smaller, suddenly heavy with truths I didn't want but needed. Jennifer said you'd want to meet, Jacob continued. She told me to bring everything. There's more. Recordings, maybe even a timeline. He gestured toward the third box. You should see this one. Inside neatly typed pages, Ethan's month-by-month plan. Notes like, undermine credibility with clients. Plant concern about emotional stability. Introduce new lawyer by June. Every word was like a knife twist. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars passed lights, flickered lives continued. But inside that room, my world had narrowed down to ink on paper and betrayal laid bare. I looked up at Jacob, my voice low but steady. You said recordings. He nodded. Ashley, Ryan's wife, found them on Ryan's laptop. The guys have been recording their Thursday night conversations for months. A strange calm settled over me. Then it's not just Ethan. No, Jacob whispered. It's all of them. Jacob's words hung in the air like smoke. All of them, I repeated, my voice little more than a whisper. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah. Ethan, Ryan, Brandon. Even me in the beginning. You were all targets in their so-called plan. They called it the Upgrade Project. The what? Jacob gave a dry, shameful laugh. A disgusting little club where they taught each other how to trade up, manipulate their wives, record arguments, build cases for divorce, and walk away with half the assets. Ethan was their ringleader. For a long time, I said nothing. The sound of the city outside felt unreal, sirens far away, wind rattling the windows. I stared at the document spread across the table, every page a bruise shaped like his handwriting. Why tell me now, I finally asked. Jacob swallowed. Because you deserve to know what's been done to you. And because I can't sleep anymore. He sat down heavily, elbows on his knees. For the first time, he looked like a man crushed under his own conscience. I thought it was just talk, he continued. The first few months it sounded like a bunch of idiots complaining about their marriages. Then Ethan started bringing binders, charts. He told us he'd found a lawyer who specialized in high-value separations. He bragged that by the time he was done, he'd walk away with half your company and full control of your intellectual property. I felt my stomach twist. And you all sat there and listened? He nodded miserably. Yes, we laughed. We drank. We said it was just venting. But the day he showed us photos of you, working, screenshots of your emails, something changed. I realized he wasn't venting anymore. He was building a case. I leaned back, my eyes fixed on him. You helped him. Yes, Jacob said quietly. At first. I told him how to phrase things to sound more convincing. But when he started talking about setting up a shell company, I knew it had gone too far. His voice cracked. I didn't stop him. I should have. For a long time we sat in silence. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioner. Then I stood and crossed to the window. Below us, the city glowed like a circuit board, countless lights flickering, each one a life, unaware of the one coming apart up here. You know what the worst part is, Jacob, I said finally. It's not even that he planned to take everything I built. It's that he made me believe we were a team while he was sharpening the knife. He said nothing. He didn't need to. I turned back toward him. You said Ashley found recordings. He nodded. She called me an hour ago crying. Ryan had hidden them in a folder labeled tax receipts. The files go back almost a year. They recorded everything, every Thursday night barbecue, every conversation about their wives. She said she listened to them all. I stared at the boxes again, the paper trail of betrayal stacked neatly in my hotel room. Do you have copies? Not yet, he said. But Ashley said she'll send them to you and Jennifer by morning. She's leaving Ryan. She wants this over. The irony almost made me laugh, the four of them plotting to destroy their wives and now their own circle imploding from within. Jacob stood and pulled a flash drive from his pocket. There's something else. Ethan's personal notes. I emailed them to myself weeks ago just in case. You'll want to see them. He placed the drive on the table, his hand trembling. I picked it up carefully as though it might burn me. What's on it? His plans for the company, for you, for his next move. He even drafted emails to potential investors claiming you were emotionally unstable and he was taking over for the sake of the business. My chest tightened. He really thought he could pull it off. Jacob gave a weary smile. He didn't just think it, he was sure of it. I exhaled slowly. Not anymore. At 1 a.m., Jennifer called again. Her voice came through, calm but urgent. Isabella. I've reviewed the preliminary files Jacob sent. We need to act fast. I'll file for a temporary restraining order in the morning to prevent Ethan from accessing any company records. I'll also secure an injunction to freeze shared assets until we can present this evidence. Do you think we'll win? I asked quietly. I think she said that Ethan just handed you his own rope. I smiled faintly. Good. After hanging up, I turned to Jacob. You should go home. You've done enough for tonight. He hesitated. Are you sure you'll be okay? I nodded. I'm not the one who should be scared anymore. He gathered his jacket and moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, he said softly, you were always better than him. Smarter, tougher, and a hell of a lot more honest. I just didn't have the guts to say it before. He left before I could respond. When the door closed, I sank onto the edge of the bed and stared at the boxes. They looked harmless now, like office supplies waiting to be filed, except every folder inside was a bullet aimed at my life. I opened one, flipping through the papers. My own words twisted into poison. Evidence of emotional instability, lack of empathy, obsessive work habits. It was surreal reading lies dressed in my handwriting. I found one email highlighted in yellow. It was from me to Ethan, sent 6 months ago. Hey, love the Microsoft contract just went through. Let's celebrate this weekend. Dinner's on me. Next to it in Ethan's handwriting. Note manic highs after project success, signs of bipolar tendencies. A shaky laugh escaped me, the kind that comes from disbelief more than humor. He'd weaponized my kindness. I looked up at the clock. 2:13 a.m. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello, a woman's voice came through, trembling. Is this Isabella? This is Ashley Collins, Ryan's wife. Yes, Ashley. Jacob mentioned you. I found recordings. Dozens of them. Every Thursday night. They talk about all of us, you, me, Brandon's wife, even some of their co-workers. They call it the upgrade plan. I listened to everything. Her voice broke. They were planning to replace us like outdated software. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I pressed my hand to my forehead, feeling a strange mix of nausea and clarity. You're doing the right thing, I said softly. There's one more thing, Ashley added. Ethan told them he was going to file in 2 weeks. He said he had enough evidence to make you look like a psychopath. But Jacob told me what he did tonight. You have proof now. He's done. My grip on the phone tightened. Send the recordings to my lawyer, every single one. I already did. Good. There was a long silence before she said, You don't sound angry. I'm beyond angry, I said. I'm planning. When the call ended, I stood by the window again, watching the city lights blur against the glass. Somewhere out there, Ethan was probably asleep or pretending to be. Maybe he thought I was curled up crying. Maybe he thought he still had control. He didn't know that I was already building something stronger than revenge. By 3:00 a.m., I'd gone through every folder cataloging each lie, each forged narrative. I made notes, highlighted inconsistencies, organized timelines. When dawn began to break over the skyline, painting the clouds pink and gold, I realized I wasn't shaking anymore. Ethan had spent months turning me into a villain. Now I was going to become something far worse, his reckoning. By 6 a.m, the first streaks of daylight spilled through the hotel window, pale and sharp against the glass. I hadn't slept a minute. My desk was a battlefield, folders, open papers spread out, sticky notes marking every manipulation Ethan had ever attempted. I looked at it all and felt something unexpected focus. Not fury, not heartbreak, just a cold, surgical sense of direction. At 6:30 a.m., I called Jacob. He picked up on the first ring voice, groggy. Isabella. We're done hiding, I said. Meet me at the office by 7. Bring coffee in the boxes. He didn't ask questions, just said, I'll be there. The streets were quiet as I drove toward Cyber Solutions, the city still half asleep, unaware that this morning would decide the course of my life. The parking lot was empty, except for my car, and a row of pigeons perched on the wire above. I unlocked the glass doors, the fluorescent lights flickering on in sequence. My heels echoed across the tiled floor, the sound steady and deliberate. Inside the conference room, I began arranging everything. Documents spread like evidence at a trial. Folders labeled in bold letters. Fabrications. Financial crimes. Shell company. Recordings. When Jacob arrived 20 minutes later, he looked uneasy but determined. He handed me a coffee and started helping organize. The smell of caffeine mixed with printer ink and nerves. You really plan to confront him in front of everyone, he asked quietly. Yes, I said. He wanted witnesses. He'll get them. We set up the room like a war exhibit, meticulous, undeniable. The boxes stood in the corner like silent sentinels waiting for their cue. By 9:30, board members began arriving. Rebecca Thompson, our venture capitalist, was first impeccably dressed, sharp-eyed, and thankfully loyal. Then came David Mitchell, one of our biggest clients. One by one, others filed in. I could feel the questions simmering as they noticed the documents. At 9:50, Ethan walked in. He looked polished as ever, tailored navy suit, fresh shave, the same confident smirk he wore at our wedding. The one that once made me feel safe. Now it just looked rehearsed. He stopped short when he saw me standing at the head of the table with Jacob at my side. His eyes flicked toward the folders, confusion morphing into recognition. The color drained from his face. "Isabella," he said lightly, forcing a smile. "Didn't know you'd be here so early. I thought we were discussing Q4 projections today." Rebecca's gaze snapped to him. "We'll get to that," she said. "Sit down, Mr. Ward." Ethan's eyes darted between us. Then he obeyed, lowering himself into the chair at the far end of the table. The clock hit 10. Rebecca called the meeting to order. Ethan stood immediately, holding a small stack of papers. "I'd like to start," he said, voice steady. "This company has grown significantly, and I'm proud of that. But I've become concerned about Isabella's recent behavior. She's been under immense stress and—" "Sit down," Rebecca said flatly. He blinked. "Excuse me." "Sit down." Her tone was ice. Ethan froze, then slowly sat. Rebecca turned toward me. "Ms. Ward, please continue." I pressed a button on the projector. The first slide appeared financial charts showing the company's growth, every major client listed by name and date. "This," I began, "is what I've built over 12 years. 17 major contracts totaling $38 million in revenue. Every one of them personally negotiated and closed by me." I clicked again. A new slide appeared. Ethan's name beside his contributions. 0 contracts closed. 0 clients brought in. Salary $425,000 per year. A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Rebecca raised a hand. "You'll get your turn," she said. I continued showing the next set of evidence, Ethan's annotated versions of my emails, where normal work messages had been twisted into psychological diagnoses. The board members leaned forward to read. One of them, Richard Hayes, shook his head. Then came the photographs, Ethan's surveillance of me working late, printed with dates and timestamps. "These were presented as proof that I was neglecting my marriage," I said. "In reality, they show exactly what's kept this company alive." I turned toward Ethan, meeting his eyes for the first time that morning. "You built nothing, Ethan. You only documented the woman who did." Rebecca folded her arms. "Mr. Ward, care to explain these materials?" Ethan cleared his throat, his confidence faltering. "This is completely out of context. Isabella's twisting things to make me look like what I interrupted, like the man who's been siphoning funds into a shell company under your name. Because I have bank records for that too." Gasps echoed across the table. Michael Stevens, the company's corporate lawyer, Ethan's so-called ally, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Isabella, perhaps we should handle this privately." "No," I said, my voice firm. "We'll handle it exactly how Ethan planned publicly." Jacob stepped forward, then placing the shell company documents on the table. "These are from his personal drive," he said quietly. "Ethan was preparing to poach clients after the divorce." Ethan shot him a look of betrayal. "You were part of this," Jacob said simply. "And I'm done." The silence that followed was almost physical. Rebecca finally stood. "Mr. Ward, your actions constitute fraud, professional misconduct, and defamation. Effective immediately. You're suspended from all company activities pending legal review." Ethan's mouth fell open. "You can't do this." "We can," David Mitchell interjected coldly. "And we will. You wanted to undermine Isabella's leadership. Congratulations. You just confirmed why she's the only reason this company survived." Ethan turned to me, then eyes flashing with something desperate, fear maybe, or rage. "You think this is over? You can't erase me from what we built." I met his stare. "I'm not erasing you. I'm documenting you. There's a difference." Rebecca nodded towards security outside the glass wall. 2 guards entered quietly. "Mr. Ward, please collect your belongings." Ethan's voice broke as he stood. "You'll regret this, Isabella. You can't make it without me." I didn't even blink. I already have. He left with the guards, shoulders rigid, the illusion of power crumbling behind him. When the door closed, the tension in the room dissolved into a heavy silence. One by one, board members turned toward me, not with pity, but respect. David Mitchell extended his hand. "Ward Cyber Solutions just became the kind of company I want to keep investing in," he said. Rebecca placed a hand on my shoulder. "File everything. Protect your legacy." I nodded. I already did. That evening, back at the hotel, I sat on the bed with my laptop open, listening to the recordings Ashley had sent. The voices were familiar: Ethan, Ryan, Brandon, laughing, plotting, dissecting their wives like business cases. You just have to make her think she's crazy. Document every argument. Courts love patterns. Once you've replaced her, you'll finally have peace. I pressed pause halfway through. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen. For the first time, I didn't recognize the woman looking back, but I liked her better. The woman who built, survived, and fought back. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, media fallout, maybe even headlines. But tonight, I allowed myself to feel the smallest flicker of satisfaction. Ethan had called me paranoid. Turns out I'd just been paying attention. The next few months felt like a war fought on paper. Courtrooms, depositions, lawyer meetings, signatures, endless signatures. Every day I woke up to another motion filed by Ethan's legal team, another attempt to claw back control, another desperate maneuver to make himself look like the victim. Jennifer called it scorched earth litigation. Ethan didn't care if he won. He just wanted to make the process as painful as possible. But pain was something I'd already made peace with. I wasn't the woman who flinched at confrontation anymore. From the outside, he still tried to keep up appearances, arriving at hearings in crisp suits, forcing smiles for the reporters camped outside. But behind closed doors, I could see the unraveling. The flash drive Jacob gave me had cracked his entire defense. The shell company, the falsified emails, even his fake business expenses tied to those Thursday night barbecues, everything was documented, time-stamped, undeniable. Ethan's new lawyer tried to settle early quietly before things got worse. Jennifer didn't let him. "We don't negotiate with thieves," she said flatly. And she was right, because it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about something I couldn't measure in numbers: dignity. A few weeks into the legal battle, Ashley reached out again. She'd filed for divorce from Ryan and was living with her sister now. We met for coffee one afternoon in a quiet cafe far from downtown. She looked fragile, dark circles under her eyes, fingers trembling around her cup. "I thought I was going crazy," she whispered. "The gaslighting, the manipulation. He made me think I was the problem." I nodded. "That's what they do. They make you question your own reflection until you forget who you are." She slid a small USB across the table. "There's more. Voice recordings from Ryan's laptop, the four of them talking about your company. You were their template, Isabella. Ethan called it the blueprint. He said if he could get half of Ward Cyber Solutions, they could all do it too." I stared at her anger, flickering beneath my calm. They were trying to industrialize betrayal. Ashley gave a humorless laugh. That's exactly what it was: a business model for destroying their wives. When she left, I sat in silence for a long time, the USB warm in my palm. I thought about all the Thursday nights I'd cooked ribs and poured drinks for those men. They'd toasted each other over barbecue and beer while plotting to erase the women who built their worlds. Not anymore. By summer, the cracks in Ethan's mask had widened. He'd sold his BMW to pay legal fees. His friends had scattered. Ryan was fighting his own divorce case, Brandon had moved out of state, and Jacob, the only one who'd done the right thing, testified against him during discovery. Under oath, Jacob told the truth about everything: the meetings, the recordings, the manipulation tactics. The courtroom was silent, except for his voice. Ethan sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. When Jacob stepped down from the stand, he glanced at me briefly as if to ask for forgiveness. I gave him a small nod, not absolution, but acknowledgement. Ethan's lawyer tried to paint me as cold, unfeeling, obsessed with work. The irony was almost poetic. Jennifer dismantled that narrative with precision. She presented the emails Ethan had annotated, the shell company contracts, and the financial transfers he'd hidden under fake business names. Every lie exposed, every manipulation laid bare. At one point, Ethan exploded, slamming his hand on the table. "She's twisting everything. None of this is how it looks." The judge didn't even flinch. "Mr. Ward," she said coolly, "everything here is exactly how it looks." The verdict came on a Tuesday morning in October. The courtroom was quiet sunlight filtering through the tall windows as the judge read her decision. "All assets and intellectual property of Ward Cyber Solutions are hereby granted in full to Ms. Isabella Ward. Mr. Ward's claims are denied due to fraudulent conduct and deliberate misrepresentation. No alimony shall be awarded. A 5-year non-compete order is placed on Mr. Ward within the cybersecurity field." Ethan's pen fell from his hand. The sound echoed like the end of something hollow. Jennifer leaned toward me and whispered, "You just want everything." But sitting there listening to the gavel strike, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, like someone had scrubbed a long infection out of my soul. When we exited the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps shouting my name. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward. I didn't answer a single question. I just kept walking. That evening, I returned to the same Hilton where it had all started. The staff recognized me. A few nodded politely. Others looked uncertain if they should congratulate me. I checked into a different room, one floor higher. Room 906 this time. I ordered dinner, not burgers, but steak and wine. When the tray arrived, I tipped the waiter and set the meal on the desk beside my laptop. I opened the new recordings Ashley had given me. The voices came through my speakers, distorted but clear. Ethan's right. You have to play the long game. Control the narrative before she controls you. These women think they're too smart. We'll teach them a lesson. I hit pause and exhaled. Then I deleted every file. Not because I didn't need them, but because I'd already won. The evidence had done its job. I didn't need to keep their poison any longer. Instead, I opened a new document. The title line blinked on the screen, Lessons in Firewalls Building Boundaries That Protect More Than Data. It wasn't a report. It was a keynote draft for a cybersecurity conference in New York. My topic: How Women in Tech Rebuild After Being Undermined by the People Closest to Them. Ethan tried to turn my story into evidence. I would turn it into a lesson. Weeks later, the final papers were signed. Ethan disappeared from the city soon after, probably out of embarrassment. The gossip blogs ran short features about the CEO who tried to outsmart his own wife. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Jennifer called one afternoon, her tone softer than usual. "It's officially over," she said. "Everything's filed and sealed." "Good," I replied. "Then it's time to start again." She paused. "You could take a break, Rest." I smiled faintly. "Rest isn't what got me here, Jennifer. Work did." She laughed. "Fair enough." When I hung up, I walked out onto my apartment balcony. The city looked different now, not as threatening, not as lonely, just alive. The hum of traffic below felt like a rhythm I could finally match. Ethan had spent years trying to make me smaller, and now every breath I took was proof that he failed. A month later, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address, just my name written in familiar handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were 3 handwritten pages, Ethan's apology. "I made mistakes," it began. "I was influenced by people who didn't have my best interests at heart. I know now that I lost everything worth keeping. I hope someday you'll forgive me." The last page wasn't an apology at all. It was a job proposal. "I have ideas for consulting. Maybe we could work together again. I still believe we made a great team." I folded the letter, carefully slid it into a folder labeled "Closed," and locked it in my drawer. Some things didn't deserve a reply. By winter, Ward Cyber Solutions had tripled in valuation. We opened a second office in Austin, hired 2 new analysts, and signed 3 new clients in Europe. For the first time, every victory felt like mine, untouched, unshared, undiluted. One night, after a long day of back-to-back meetings, I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through old photos on my phone. There was one of Ethan and me at a charity gala me, in a red dress, him in that same navy suit he'd worn the day of the board meeting. We were smiling, but I could see it now, his hand slightly clenched, his smile strained. It wasn't love in that picture, it was possession. I deleted the photo and didn't look back. The next chapter of my life was waiting. But before I could turn the page, fate had one more scene planned for me. It was late spring when the final loose ends of my old life found their way back to me. Jacob's wedding invitation arrived in the mail, a simple white envelope with my name written in careful handwriting. I almost threw it away at first. But curiosity won. Inside was a cream-colored card embossed with gold Jacob Miller and Madison Lee, May 14th. Private ceremony. RSVP requested. For a few minutes, I just sat there staring at it. The man who once sat at my patio table laughing at my husband's betrayal was now starting a new life. There was a time I would have felt bitter. Now I just felt curious. People changed. Sometimes guilt made them better. Sometimes it only broke them. I decided to see which kind Jacob had become. 3 weeks later, I found myself at a small countryside chapel surrounded by fields of wildflowers. The air smelled of lavender and new beginnings. The wedding was intimate, maybe 60 guests. Jacob looked happier than I'd ever seen him. When he spotted me from across the aisle, his expression faltered for a moment, as if he couldn't quite believe I'd come. Then he smiled. During the reception, the music was soft, the lights low, and the laughter sincere, not the forced kind I'd grown used to hearing at Ethan's barbecues. Madison Jacobs' new wife was radiant and kind. She came up to me at the buffet line offering a warm handshake. "Jacob told me what you went through," she said gently. "He said you showed him what real integrity looks like." I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled. "He's lucky to have found you." When it was time for speeches, Jacob stood at the head table, his glass raised. "I want to thank my wife." He began, his voice thick with emotion, and also someone who probably never expected to hear her name in a toast tonight, Isabella Ward. The crowd turned curious. I froze. Jacob continued steady now. "I was part of something terrible once, a group of men who let their insecurities turn them into cowards. Isabella was the one who exposed the truth, and she did it without cruelty, without vengeance, just clarity. She reminded me that decency isn't a weakness." His eyes met mine. "Madison helped me become the man I should have been years ago. But Isabella, she helped me see who I never want to be again." There was a soft murmur of applause, but I barely heard it. My chest felt tight in that strange way that happens when you're unexpectedly forgiven. I raised my glass to him in silence. Madison smiled at me from her seat eyes, kind and knowing. For the first time in a long while, I felt something like peace. 3 weeks after the wedding, I stopped by Trader Joe's on my way home from work. It had been an ordinary day, investor calls, a team meeting, lunch with a new client. My company was expanding faster than I could have imagined. We had offices in 2 states now, clients across the country, and a European branch launching next quarter. I was standing in the wine aisle comparing 2 bottles of Merlot when I saw him. Ethan. He was 2 aisles over, in front of the rice section, wearing a faded polo shirt and jeans that hung too loosely on his frame. He'd lost weight, a lot of it. His hair was unkempt, his posture slouched. For a second, I didn't even recognize him. He was holding 2 boxes of rice, studying the labels like the price difference might matter. I stood still, bottle in hand, watching him. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I felt nothing. Just a strange, detached curiosity, like seeing an old photograph of someone you used to know. Then, as if sensing my gaze, he looked up. Our eyes met for barely 2 seconds. His face shifted confusion first, then recognition, then shame. He opened his mouth like he might say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned back to the shelf, placed the cheaper bottle of wine in my basket, and walked toward the register. Behind me, I heard a faint shuffle, the sound of footsteps moving fast, then fading. When I turned my head slightly, his cart was abandoned in the middle of the aisle, rice boxes still inside. I didn't look for him again. At the checkout, the cashier smiled. "Rough day," she asked casually as she scanned my items. "Not anymore," I said. Outside, the sun was setting, spilling gold light across the parking lot. I loaded my groceries into the trunk and took a long breath. The air smelled of rain and fresh asphalt. The world felt open again. That night, as I prepared dinner for an investor visiting the next day, I realized it had been almost exactly a year since I'd left Ethan. 12 months since I'd walked away holding a suitcase and a tray of cold ribs. I no longer cooked ribs. I didn't need to perform love or hospitality for anyone who mistook my kindness for submission. Instead, I seared salmon, poured myself a glass of that Merlot, and sat by the window, watching the city lights blink like small victories. On my desk sat a framed photo, not of Ethan, not of the wedding. I'd once thought was the start of everything, but of my first office, a tiny cluttered room with 2 computers, a flickering lamp, and a younger version of me wearing exhaustion like armor. That woman built something from nothing. Ethan tried to destroy it. I saved it. Sometimes people ask me if I regret those 12 years, if I see them as wasted time. I don't. Those 12 years taught me how much I could survive, how far I could rise when pushed to the edge, and how easily love can rot when fed by envy. I used to think resilience meant fighting back. Now I know it means walking away and never needing to look back. Weeks later, a journalist reached out, the same one who had once written that viral article, How Isabella Ward Built a Cyber Empire While Divorcing Dead Weight. She asked if I'd do a follow-up interview about life after success. I smiled at the email and typed a single line in reply. "I'm not rebuilding anymore, I'm just living." Then I hit send, closed my laptop, and turned off the lights. The city glowed beyond my window, alive, loud, indifferent, beautiful. I raised my glass one last time, not in bitterness or pride, but in gratitude, for every betrayal that became my teacher, for every silence that became my strength. And for the moment, I saw Ethan in that grocery store and felt absolutely nothing. That was the real victory. He looked up. I looked right through him. And that's when I knew I had finally deleted the last virus from my life.